So we are Edward Jones, Victor Ying, Andrew Wilkie, Dmitry Zvolinsky, Wembugu Mutahi, and Zhao Yao Zhang. And we are students at the University of Wollongong, and together we make up the Green Eggs team. This presentation will go into detail regarding the technical information around the development and creation of the Green Eggs app, including the issue being addressed, the design process, technologies used, the development process, and a demonstration of the application. Green Eggs is a friendly recipe app designed to allow users to share their recipes. The app is available on both iOS and Android mobile devices. Green Eggs let users create recipes in simple steps and share them with the world. Users can also search a large database of recipes, finding recipes that suit their dietary and allergy requirements. Our client outlined that there was a desire for a new recipe app. They wanted users to be able to create recipes in simple steps and add images. They also wanted the users to be able to push their recipes to social media, as well as receive notifications from social media too. One of the aims for our client was to create a mobile application that encourages and motivates users to show off their cooking skills. And showing off on social media is one of the most relevant and crucial things to be done during the current times. The Green Eggs team was given the freedom with the specifics on social sharing, and the team had options to allow sharing to external social media platforms, create an internal social media platform, or both. Green Eggs needed to be developed for mobile devices. However, the specific system was not critical, hence the team chose to cover all mobile devices by creating an Android and iOS application. The original brief from our client included two main aspects of the app: recipe creation and recipe sharing. All recipes needed to follow a process, otherwise it wasn't a recipe. This is one of the largest features of the Green Eggs application, and a large request on behalf of the client as well. Recipe creation was to include the ability to make a recipe by creating simple steps and adding any relevant images at the steps if the user wanted to. The way recipes was created was up to the Green Eggs team to decide, to ensure it was simple and intuitive for everyone. The social aspect of apps is a growing feature in most modern applications, and is another aim for the Green Eggs app. The client wanted to make it possible for users to share their recipes with others. Along with that, notifications was another feature that wanted to be included by the client. When sharing recipes with a social media platform, the client wanted to be able to know when something relevant happened to that recipe. For example, if a friend commented or liked their recipes, or it was shared again to another group of friends. And the client wanted to make sure the user received a notification based on that. Based on the needs outlined by the client, the team performed additional research to understand the remainder of the issue and the problem that the app was designed to solve. The team investigated similar applications available and noting down components that they could do and the other components that the apps couldn't do. From these lists, the team was able to determine a more definitive problem description and therefore develop a more accurate solution. The app needed to perform a few key tasks. These included creating recipes, adding photos, searching for recipes, sharing recipes, and the ability to like recipes as well. The remainder of the features on top of these was to prove that the Green Eggs app is the friendly recipe app that everyone should have.
Our goal for the UI UX design of Green Eggs was to deliver an experience that promotes our aim for the app, a place to create and share recipes with people around the world. Using the market research documentation, we had a pretty good idea on the way we wanted Green Eggs to look. We first decided on creating a logo for the app. To create the logo first was a group decision. It created momentum within the team to start development in the design process. We wanted to create a logo that visually represented the name of our app, Green Eggs, so we did exactly that. Designing the logo made it easy to decide that we wanted to include the pastel and dark green accents in the user interface of the app. These colors were generated by the Ava design system color generator. This generator takes a primary brand color and uses deep learning to output shades of each of the 6 categories. We reran this deep learning generator until we were satisfied with all the colors we had. Our final primary palette is comprised of white, pastel green, and dark cyan to bring a calm and natural feel to our brand, and it is implemented using our psychological strategies in our product and marketing to guide the eye and highlight important bits of green eggs. We originally had a pastel yellow background for the app because it represented happiness, which we wanted to convey to our users to reflect the happiness you get while cooking. However, we ended up deciding on a white base with the green accents as it looked cleaner and minimalistic. Our full brand logo uses two typefaces, Roboto Slab for the brand name and Lato for the brand slogan. Both typefaces had to be royalty free and under a license that would allow us to use them however we like. We chose Roboto Slab for the brand name because we were inspired by the typefaces used in real-world recipe books. Recipe books tend to use serif fonts in order to appear more sophisticated. We opted for a thicker version of these serif fonts as we wanted to appear more friendly and approachable. We chose Lato for the slogan text because it is sans serif font that pairs well with Roboto Slab. We ended up using Lato in place of Open Sans throughout the rest of the app, further differentiating our unique design system from the Avid design system. Figma allowed the team to collaborate on high-fidelity prototypes together in real time. This accelerated the design stage and allowed us to actively discuss certain features of our design within the team. Inspired by other apps such as Tasty, Yumly, and Instagram, the design team used their market research to understand how we wanted to use space on our user interface. We wanted to make it easy for users to open the app and immediately get into recipe creation. Therefore, we created a big button in the bottom tab bar to take users directly to creating a recipe. Further on, we aimed for our prototypes to be used for user testing as well, which we achieved by adding interactivity within our prototypes. Using the app Figma Mirror, it allowed us to see how the prototypes actually translated onto our mobile devices. This assisted not only our design process, but also our testing process, as you could interact with the prototypes through Figma Mirror. Our testing process gave us direct feedback on what design decisions were working and the areas that needed improvement or complete redesign. Perfecting our high-fidelity prototypes was the last task before the development stage began, and gave our developers a clear idea on the way we wanted the app to look and feel.
Green Eggs was written with the TypeScript programming language. TypeScript is a statically typed superset of JavaScript developed and maintained by Microsoft. We chose TypeScript over many other possible languages for a few reasons. Firstly, TypeScript, being a superset of JavaScript, was easy to pick up for members of our group with limited programming experience. Everyone in the group has had experience with JavaScript from our web development subject, and the syntax is not too dissimilar to Java, which is another language everyone in our group has experience using. Secondly, we chose TypeScript because it's one of the few languages that can be used for both the front end and the back end of a mobile app, especially when you want to develop for iOS and Android with a single codebase. Removing the need for all members of the group to learn two languages was a big point in its favour. Finally, we chose TypeScript because it would let us create a native Android and iOS app with a single codebase, significantly reducing the amount of work required to build an app for two different platforms. All of these points are valid for JavaScript too, but we ended up using TypeScript instead. We chose TypeScript over JavaScript because of the many benefits that come from adding static typing to JavaScript. Primarily, having static typing ensures that there won't be any type errors at runtime, which prevents a lot of bugs. For example, Airbnb found from a post-mortem analysis that 38% of JavaScript bugs were preventable with TypeScript. For a large app like Green Eggs, this is invaluable. The TypeScript compiler simply won't compile code that isn't type-safe unless the developer has specifically made an exception. The system architecture of Green Eggs consists of a few subsystems. Mainly, there is a mobile app frontend and a backend. The mobile app frontend consists of a React Native app that works on iOS and Android. This mobile app sends and requests data to and from the backend. This lets the app persist data and share data between users. This backend consists of a GraphQL API, a Postgres database, and an S3 bucket. The GraphQL API layer handles all backend logic such as authentication, and in the process persists data in the database and files in the S3 bucket. The mobile app frontend consists of one repository, GreenEggs Mobile. This code makes up the mobile app and can be compiled and run on Android and iOS smartphones. The way this is done is through a library called Expo. Expo is a layer on top of the React Native library, which itself utilizes the React library. From the top, React is a TypeScript library for building user interfaces. It is most commonly used on the web with the React DOM library, but can also be used on mobile devices with the React Native library. Expo is then another layer on top of React Native and provides better build tools and components for building mobile apps. The backend consists of one repository, GreenEggs API. This repository contains TypeScript code for the API as well as a schema file that defines how to build and update the database. The database management system we use is Postgres, and we use a TypeScript library called Prisma as an object relational mapper, otherwise known as an ORM, to bridge the gap between the API and the database. The API technology we use is called GraphQL. GraphQL is similar to REST, however, GraphQL attempts to solve the problems of overfetching and underfetching data. GraphQL allows the end user to specify the exact fields of data they need to fetch. GraphQL is also quite well supported with TypeScript and React thanks to the Apollo library. Prisma works like many other ORMs in that it lets us define the database in a schema file, and whenever there are any updates to the file, we can migrate them. This solves the issue of having version conflicts between the database and the API, since that version of the database is defined in code alongside the API. Prisma can be controlled through a command line tool. The frontend and the backend send data to each other via the GraphQL protocol. With GraphQL, data is serialized into the JSON format and transmitted over HTTPS. This is very similar to the way REST works, however, GraphQL uses only one endpoint, and the consumer of a GraphQL API can specify exactly what fields to request when retrieving an object. To facilitate GraphQL, we use a library called Apollo on the front end and back end. There are two versions of the library, Apollo Server and Apollo Client. Apollo Server is used by the API and Apollo Client is used by the mobile app. Apollo Server takes GraphQL schemas and resolvers as input and creates an HTTP server that can be used with the GraphQL API. A GraphQL schema file is a file that defines how the client will interface with the API. Unlike REST, that has operations like get, post, and patch, GraphQL uses queries and mutations. GraphQL queries are used for fetching data, and mutations are used for adding, modifying, or deleting data. Resolvers are functions that handle GraphQL operations, and they provide the logic on how to create, fetch, or modify, or delete data. To keep Apollo type safe and to better keep one source of truth for Apollo type definitions, we have created a simple script for automatically generating types for queries and mutations based on the schema file of the API. To run this script, just run the command yarn codegen from the root folder of either repository. We use several methods to ensure security within the GreenEggs app. The first security consideration we take is using HTTPS for all network traffic. HTTPS ensures that all traffic is sent with end-to-end encryption, preventing potential attackers from viewing sensitive data, such as passwords. When passwords do reach the API, they are salted and hashed with the bcrypt algorithm before being stored in the database. Bcrypt is a particularly good hashing algorithm for passwords because it salts passwords, preventing rainbow table attacks, and its security can be increased over time as computing speed improves by incrementing the iteration count. Storing passwords this way is beneficial over plain text, because if the database is compromised, an attacker won't be able to directly use passwords, and because the password hashes are salted, the attacker won't be able to cross-reference hashes in order to decrypt the passwords. When a user logs in, a JSON Web Token, or JWT, is created by the backend. The token is an encoded string that, when decoded, reveals a JSON object. This token usually contains a user ID or something that can be used to identify a specific user. The token can only be decoded by the backend. Once this token is generated, it is sent from the backend to the client. The client will then send this token with every GraphQL query and mutation, and it lets the server identify who the client is. This lets us safely have mutations like delete user, since the backend will only let you delete a user if it can verify that you are that user. The biggest security vulnerability with using JWTs is token theft. This can happen when a malicious entity is somehow able to intercept a token and use it as their own. Since we use HTTPS, it is not possible to intercept this token over the network, but we still need to store the token securely on the client device so that it can't be stolen by other apps. Android and iOS both have APIs for securely storing key value pairs of data on their device, but Expo provides us with the Secure Store API, which acts as a layer of abstraction over both APIs, depending on which platform the app is built for. There are several forms within the GreenEggs app, many of which require some kind of validation, such as required fields, maximum length input boxes, or even password rules. To tackle this problem, we use a library called React Hook Form. With this library, you can easily add rules to input fields. We have added our own layer of abstraction over this library and have combined it with Apollo mutations by creating the useForm hook and the controlled input component. This hook is a reusable bit of stateful code that creates a React Hook form with a function for submitting the relevant mutation. We use this pattern with the login form, sign-up form, recipe creation form, and a few of the settings forms. When we initially created our app prototypes, we built our design system on the existing open source Eva design system. Eva design system actually has a mobile library implementation called UIKitten. This component library provided us with many of our core components, such as inputs, cards, and buttons. There were, however, a few components that UIKitten could not give us, such as the alphabetized list component, which we had to implement ourselves. All of these custom components are kept in the UI folder and can be imported from @greeneggs/UI. Setting up the development environment is simple. After installing Git and authenticating your GitHub account with an SSH key, you must clone both repositories from GitHub. This can be done with git clone git@github.com @jones/greeneggsapi.git and git clone git@github.com @jones/greeneggsmobile.git. For the front end, you must install Node, and through Node, you must install Yarn. You must set up the environment variables for the mobile front end. It only uses one environment variable, API URI. Find your local IP and create a new file named .env with the following contents. API_URI equals http:// then the host IP, 4000 and then a /. Now, from the mobile directory, run yarn install and yarn start. These commands install all of the Node.js dependencies and start the Expo server. The API requires an install of Docker Compose. Docker is a tool for creating containers. One benefit of containers, and the reason we use them here, is they remove the need for installing lots of dependencies. The other reason we use Docker Compose is to help automatically create an instance of the Postgres database. You will also need to create a .env file in the API directory with environment variables for the S3 bucket. The first time setting up the backend, you will need to run Docker Compose run Apollo yarn install. This installs all the Node.js dependencies via yarn. The next command to run is Docker Compose run Prisma yarn Prisma migrate dev. This will set up the database and update it to the latest schema. Finally, you will need to run Docker Compose up. This will start an instance of the API inside the Docker container. For this project, we used Git as our version control system for all code. Git is used to track changes, versions, and to assist collaboration with teams of developers. The typical workflow when using Git is to first git pull any new changes, then git checkout -b a new branch for the issue you're working on. Make some changes to the code, and then run git commit -am message to commit the latest changes. We use the conventional commit standard for our commit messages. This keeps the commit history clean and will be compatible with any tools we may want to use in the future, such as automatic versioning. If you have created any new files, you will need to run git add dot. We aim to keep commits atomic, so if there are any redundant commits in the history, they must be squashed with git rebase -i. Once the commits are ready, push them with git push. If the local commit history is different from the remote commit history, for example as a result of rebasing, you will need to run git push -- force. Go to GitHub and create a new pull request from this branch. Connect the issue to the pull request so that the issue will be closed automatically when the pull request is merged, and this is also a good time to do a code review. If the code passes all tests and passes all reviews, it can be merged back into main. Our repositories are hosted on GitHub, which is one of, if not the largest site for hosting Git repositories. GitHub also provides many tools to assist with the development process. One such tool is GitHub Actions. We use GitHub Actions for continuous delivery. Since there are two GitHub repositories, they both do this slightly differently. GitHub Actions is triggered by the .yml file found inside the .github/workflows folder inside the project directory. These files contain rules for how to build the project and deploy it. The mobile app actions file contains instructions on how to test the app and publish it to Expo. The API actions file contains instructions on how to test the API and publish it to Heroku. Heroku is a cloud platform service that can be used to host web apps, among other things. This process is almost completely hands-off, and the only time it needs manual intervention is when there is a need to update the database schema and a Prisma migrate deploy command needs to be run. GitHub also contains a lot of other tools that assisted in our development process. We strive to stick to the agile principles during the development of this app, and specifically we wanted to use some of the techniques found in Scrum. Doing daily scrums was a little bit unrealistic, since not everybody would work on the app every day, and we worked over different time zones. Doing daily scrums by ourselves was the next best thing. One aspect of Scrum that we embraced was the sprint. We broke down app development into weekly sprints, and we used a backlog. For our backlog, we used GitHub issues. Issues can be bugs, features, or even discussions. They have a title and a description, and they support a discussion thread underneath. When planning for the features needed for the app, they would be added to the backlog of GitHub issues. For sprints, we used GitHub milestones. When planning a sprint, we would go through the GitHub backlog and select the most urgent or relevant issues, adding them to a milestone. We didn't formally do any time estimation with our issues, but informally we aimed to keep the workload in each sprint the same. Okay guys, well this is the Green Eggs mobile app. As you can see, when you open the app, you're presented with the welcome screen and you can choose to create an account or log in. For this demo, I will create an account. I will call myself John Smith. Email, we'll just do js@gmail.com. Password, just be password 123 exclamation mark. Alright, and immediately we get signed in, and I will demonstrate to you that we can sign out and sign back in. Alright, and this is the app, this is Green Eggs, and I'll first of all show you how you can update your profile. You can click the edit button here. You can choose to change your first and last name, give yourself a bio. I'm going to give my bio, I'm going to call it I Love Recipes. Save that and let's give ourselves a profile picture. Let's just go with this dog over here. And while that's uploading, there we go. I'm going to demo the trending section now, so if I scroll through here, this is a list of the most popular recipes in the app at the moment. So how about we just have a look at this recipe here, this vegan cream spinach pasta. As you can see, this recipe view contains all the relevant information for the recipe. We have a title, we have the categories, we have the duration it takes to make the recipe, the creator, the like count and the comment count, and we have a description here. We scroll down, we've got a notice for any potential allergies that this recipe might trigger. Have a list of ingredients that we can expand and see a full list there. And we've got a list of steps here that we can swipe horizontally through. And if we want to see the full thing, we can tap that recipe there and see it full screen. We've got a list of comments here as well. So you can see Dimitri has added a comment here. This is the next one on my list. I will add a comment just as an example. Post this comment. There we go. So let's see, the creator of this recipe is Ed Jones. I think I really like his recipe, so I'm going to see his profile and see if he's got any others. And he's got one other recipe, this old school mac and cheese. Have a look through that too. And this looks like one that we might want to try later too. So I'm actually going to go follow this guy because I want to see more of his recipes in the future, and I will be able to see that in the newsfeed. I'll just give that a refresh. There we go. And we'll see all of his recipes will show up here. I'm just going to demonstrate what happens when we save a recipe as well. So we can save a recipe by tapping that bookmark icon in the top right hand corner. And then clicking this bookmark icon here, we can see the recipe has now been saved to this view. We go back to the home page, we have another tab here for categories. We've got a list of categories. We can view all of the categories and have a more extensive list. And we can just have a look through the cocktail category here. And it's just all of the recipes in the database that have been tagged with cocktail. But what if that wasn't enough? What if you needed a better way to search for recipes? Well, you can actually search for recipes up here. So you could search for something specific, like quiche. And then we've actually only got one quiche in the app at the moment, but there it is. Or you could search for cocktails here as well. And we've got this filtering option here as well, so we can actually go all the way down to including ingredients. So if we wanted to only show recipes that have vodka in them, we can do that, and we can see that this is the only cocktail that shows up when that ingredient is included. I will clear that and demonstrate this, that we've got the ability to sort by new, popular and relevant. So you can see the latest cocktails that have been added 4 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago. We see the most popular ones. So you see this one's got 11 likes, 14 comments, 8 likes, 9 comments. And then we've got relevant, which is a mixture of both, so it's going to be recipes that are new but are also popular. What we can also do while we're here is we can search for users. So if we put somebody's name in here, we can actually find them through that. If we have some friends that are using the app, that's how we can find them and give them a follow. Now I'm going to demonstrate what happens if I go into my settings. So here you can see there's another way to edit your profile and your profile picture. You could also change your password. You can also sign out through that. You can delete your account through this setting there. And you can set your dietary preferences and allergy preferences here too. So what this does is if you add a dietary preference, all throughout the app you will have that filtered out. All the recipes that clash with that will be hidden. Do the same for allergy preferences. So now if we go back to start, this will now be a different list because it will have filtered out everything that conflicts with our allergy settings. I'll also show you that we have a new notification because somebody liked our comment. Oh, look at that, it was Ed Jones liked our comment that we put on his recipe. Okay, and I'm going to demonstrate creating a new recipe now. We're going to create a fruit salad. Healthy and delicious dessert. I'm going to say my fruit salad serves 4 people and it takes 15 minutes to prepare. It's fruit salad is going to contain apple, yeah, chopped up apples. I'm going to say 2 chopped up apples, and it will contain some pineapple. Let's say chopped, and say 1 pineapple. Mango. As you can see, we can just add ingredients all day. I'll add some steps here, so let's add a photo for that. Chop up the strawberries. Let's say chop up the apples. Finally, serve. Okay, it's in the categories of dessert. Doesn't trigger any allergies. It is dairy-free, gluten-free, and it's vegan and vegetarian. We'll add a cover image here. There we go, and let's publish this recipe. And there we have it. Published our first recipe. If we go back to our profile now, give that a refresh. There we go. There is our fruit salad on our profile. Alright, that will be it for the demo today.